Barbara Szypek's death has shocked Poland. After speaking with Ombudsman Marcin Wiącko and Barbara's attorney Krzysztof Gotakowicz, Polish President Andrzej Duda sent a special letter to Prime Minister Donald Tusk. The letter posed 7 key questions. What were the reasons behind the appointment of prosecutor Ewa Wrosek as the desk officer in the so-called Two Towers case? And who made it? Did the National Prosecutor's Office put the proceedings in question under its supervision? What was the rationale behind the decision to deny the participation of Miss Barbara Szypek's attorney in her interview as a witness? Were other witnesses in these proceedings also denied the opportunity to have their attorney participate in the hearings? How long did the interrogation of Miss Barbara Szypek last? Were interruptions ordered during its duration? Was there a situation of refusal to order a break requested by the witness? Was the interrogation recorded? Who prepared the minutes of the hearing? Did Miss Barbara Szypek read the minutes herself? The letter was also addressed for the attention of the speakers of the Sejm and the Senate, the President of the Constitutional Court and the First President of the Supreme Court, as well as the President of the Supreme Administrative Court and the Defender of Civil Rights. It is very important that the President spoke on this issue, and I am grateful to him. The Prime Minister, in his well-known way, worked out to perfection, was nowhere to be found. He wasn't at the Council of Ministers yesterday, and he wasn't at the Polish Sejm today. For a normal person, well, this is a very tough crisis. For a politician with some insight, and I don't deny that Donald Tusk is such a politician, also realizes this. That's why he just ran off. Polish Prime Minister Tusk, pushed to the wall, finally spoke out. This probably won't surprise anyone, but the politician doesn't seem to feel guilty about anything. Mr. President, restoring the rule of law after 8 years of lawlessness, for which you share responsibility, was and is the main goal of my government. And the days when the President, Prime Minister or party chairman influence the fate of investigations are gone. Please get used to it somehow. That is, we can presume that the President will not get answers to the questions. Similar tactics are being used by politicians in the ruling coalition who are doing their best to have the shocking topic die down. Do you gentlemen like that the most politicized prosecutor is conducting a political investigation? We don't like that you are trying to set up people here. You are Kaczynski's envoy. Is this the independent prosecutor's office you fought for? Is this the element of independence? Law and justice politicians who want to answer to an independent prosecutor's office will really have that chance, and let them not push themselves so much in front of that prosecutor's office, really. The nervousness of the power politicians is fueled by the fact that Barbara Szypek died of a heart attack less than 3 days after a nearly 5-hour interrogation, to which the interrogator's attorney was not allowed. The woman was interrogated by 3 experienced lawyers, including Ewa Wrosek, Jacek Dubois, and Christian Lasik. She died recently, most likely from the fact that she got tremendously stressed because she was put in such conditions. Prosecutor Ewa Wrosek, who conducted the investigation, has repeatedly publicly declared her political views. The woman is even brimming with a desire for revenge against the Polish right wing. We are living in post-war times when there are gangs roaming the forest. The state is still under threat, and it is necessary to act in an unconventional way. The prosecutor is supposed to act in a non-standard way. The prosecutor has the right to judge for himself what action is in the public interest. I have the courage to do this. Those who criticize me the loudest do not. I have not broken the law, but most, the rules and regulations. So the conduct of such an investigation, which is going on in the case of opposition leader Jarosław Kaczyński, by such an extremely politicized prosecutor, is a grim grotesque. We are dealing with a political trial carried out by a politicized prosecutor's office, and this is the crown evidence. And then we are dealing with a tragedy, with a huge tragedy. When asked about this appalling case, the presidential candidate and vice president of Civic Platform, Rafał Trzaskowski, washed his hands of the matter. He doesn't know anything about it. Please ask the prosecutor's office. I do not have any additional information here. This behavior of the prosecutor's office does not guarantee justice. Ordinary citizens are becoming increasingly concerned about this, because if the machine seems to go unpunished in cases involving politicians, what about when an ordinary citizen falls under the legal steamroller? This is a scandal, of course. This lady prosecutor should not rule on this case at all. She should not handle this case. The lady prosecutor is acting like some kind of criminal. I'm simply afraid that I might fall into such cases, because it's a man as he lives that can fall to them. There's no telling what they will do to a person. As President Duda noted in his letter, the original sin of the current situation in the prosecutor's office is its illegal takeover last January. At that time, from 1 hour to the next, Minister Bodnar stopped recognizing National Prosecutor Dariusz Barski. The illegality of this action was confirmed by the Supreme Court. This war of politicians against judges and judges against judges if prosecutors also join this war, will lead to the destruction of the state. Law and Justice asserts at the beginning of the end of the period of militant democracy, a time of permanent law-breaking, will be the victory in the presidential elections. No power lasts forever, but we, Mr. Speaker, will not seek revenge. We will seek justice, and it will come sooner than you think. The policy of so-called settlements, which in practice is brutal revenge against the opposition, seems to have no limits. Even a death or a huge tragedy is not a bucket of cold water. On the contrary, the government is announcing more settlements.
A war criminal cannot be trusted. Shortly after his phone call with Donald Trump, Putin's troops again took aim at the most defenseless by striking a hospital in Sumy, in the north of the country. 9 people have been killed and 12 wounded. In response, Ukrainians fired on a Russian refinery in Krasnodar, supplying fuel to the criminal army. Putin does not agree to peace and always finds an opportunity to attack. He always seeks confrontation and escalation. He seeks to make this war last. Donald Trump is serious about the ceasefire in Ukraine and protecting civilians. Yesterday, he spoke by phone with Vladimir Putin. Today, he spoke with Volodymyr Zelensky.
This terrible conflict would have never started with President Trump in charge, but he's determined to end it once and for all.
The White House described the American leader's conversation with President Zelensky as good and productive. It lasted about an hour. Much of the discussion was based on the call made yesterday with President Putin in order to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their requests and needs. We are very much on track. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio and President Trump's national security advisor Mike Waltz will discuss the details with the Ukrainians and Russians. Volodymyr Zelensky's behavior in the Oval Office when he spoke with the American president and vice president in a confrontational tone was criticized by former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, who argues that Donald Trump wants to help Ukraine because he does not trust Russia and especially Putin. This is Trump's negotiating style. I worked with him for 3 years. I know his approach. I am absolutely convinced that he does not trust Putin. But to end the war, the American leader wants to bring both sides to the negotiating table. This is the only way out.
Well, you have a situation where you have a lot of guns pointing at each other foolishly because it would have never happened if I were president. That was not a war that was supposed to happen. And it did happen. So that's where we are. And right now, you have a lot of guns pointing at each other, and a ceasefire without going a little bit further would have been tough.
A halt to attacks on energy infrastructure has been agreed with Putin, which especially for Ukraine is good news. On the other hand, Putin continues to attack civilians, but the negotiations are a start to further talks, which the American president is ready to undertake. The only liaison who can start any peace talks, and it's not just about Trump himself, it's about potential. It's about how Russia treats other partners. Russia only feels respect towards America. Washington wants to take advantage of this. The language of force works on Putin, and he knows that Donald Trump can both impose further economic sanctions and rearm Ukraine, which the Kremlin's military will bear the brunt of. We support President Trump's efforts. From my point of view, he is a strong leader who can create the conditions for a ceasefire and lasting peace. The #1 goal is to stop the horrors of this war, save civilians, and stop the Kremlin's imperial inclinations. After that, there must come a time for holding Russia accountable for the committed crimes.
The Commission has already concluded that Russian authorities have committed crimes against humanity of torture. In our present report, we have also found that the Russian authorities committed crimes against humanity of enforced disappearances.
Every day of the war is another of Putin's criminal actions. A truce is the only hope for Ukraine. These are difficult negotiations, but for the first time in 3 years, there is real hope to stop Putin's aggression.
On the sidelines of negotiations between Washington and Moscow over Ukraine, the fate of yet another region is at stake. The United States is pressing Russia on the Middle East. At issue is Iran and its ability to produce nuclear weapons. For the Americans, the issue of taking Tehran out of the game is becoming a crucial piece in the Middle East puzzle. The US campaign in Yemen has heated up the links between the cells of the so-called Middle East axis of evil. Hitting the bases of Houthi militants triggered an immediate response from Iran, a major ally of the deemed terrorist organization. The temperature in the Middle East is rising dangerously. It is very clear. We will respond to any aggression against our territorial integrity, national security, or interests with full force. There is no doubt about that. The United States is unequivocally pointing out that Tehran is behind the continued destabilization in the region, targeting mainly Israel. Houthi, Hamas, and Hezbollah have allied against Tel Aviv under the protection of Iran.
All options are always on the table with the president, but Iran needs to hear him loud and clear. It is completely unacceptable, and it will be stopped, the level of support that they've been providing the Houthis.
After Houthi attacks on U.S. ships in the Red Sea, Washington warned of an escalation that would end tragically for the entire region.
Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran. And Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire.
A key pawn in this game, however, may turn out to be Russia. US President Trump is trying to force a declaration from Putin to block Iran's nuclear program. At the same time, he is trying to bring Tehran itself to the negotiating table. But there is unlikely to be a breakthrough here.
Trump just recently wrote a letter to Iran Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei trying to kickstart these negotiations. The Iranians say they're still studying the letter. But the Houthis are what appear to be the last fully functional group in Iran's so-called axis of resistance that included the Lebanese group Hezbollah, Hamas, Iraqi Shia militias.
It is also no secret that Moscow is actively involved in destabilizing the Middle East. Ukrainian military intelligence revealed that it was Russian mercenaries who were to train in Africa and equip Hamas militants who took part in the 7th of October 2023 attack on Israel.
شباب هاجموه نزل